All right, it is 1 o'clock. We have 12 participants. I can give it a couple minutes or we can get started. I'm looking at Danita's screen. Danita, do you want me to wait a minute or two, or would you like me to get started?
Let's go ahead and get started.
Okay, excellent. All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for this presentation on disability rights. At this time, we ask that you please mute your microphones. There will be an opportunity for questions at the end of this presentation, and you can always type questions in the chat box during the duration of the content, and we'll do our best to answer those questions. Please also note that there is an interpreter that will be pinned and spotlighted during this Zoom that will help to provide our content. If at any time we should lose our Zoom connection, please know that we will contact all those who are participating today to properly reschedule. At this time, I would like to thank the Michigan Department of Civil Rights for making this presentation possible. Their expertise and time is so greatly appreciated. I would now like to hand off to Tyra Khan, who is going to introduce the Michigan Department of Civil Rights.
This is Tyra speaking. Thank you everyone for joining us today. We're really glad that we're all here together to share some information about your rights. As Jacqueline said, my name is Tyra Khan. I am with the Michigan Department of Civil Rights. I have been with the department in the state of Michigan for about 20 years. I started off as an investigator and moved to different teams, investigating housing cases, employment cases, all kinds of things. And then was hired as a staff attorney in 2019. And currently I'm working as the interim director of the state of Michigan ADA Compliance Division. Today, joining me for our informational session is my colleague, Valerie Barkley, and I'll turn it over to her to talk a little bit about her background.
Hi, thank you, Tyra. And like Tyra said, my name is Valerie Barkley. I'm thrilled to be here today, and I appreciate everyone who has joined us. I am a staff attorney with the Michigan Department of Civil Rights, currently assigned to the housing team. I've been with the state about 16 years. And with this particular department for just over 6 of those years. I came from investigations where I handled mostly employment complaints, but some public service and public accommodation complaints as well. So thanks again for joining us. And I will turn this on over to Jacqueline to get us rolling.
Thank you, Valerie. I'm proud to introduce the Michigan Paralyzed Veterans of America's team. Michael Harris, who will be presenting today, has worked with the MPVA since 1996, and he has acted as the chapter's government relations director, executive director, and is currently our president. Brenda Weeder is our team's administrative assistant. She has been with the chapter for over 10 years and has been instrumental in contributing to putting this presentation together. Robin Bennett is the chapter's development coordinator. She has been active with the chapter for over 10 years and has been instrumental also in contributing to this presentation. Finally, my name is Jacqueline Coaches. I am the executive director here at the MPVA, and I've had the pleasure of working here for 14 years, and I'm so delighted to be a part of today's event. Today, we are going to talk to you about disability rights, but we're going to go back and forth between the Michigan Department of Civil Rights and the MPVA. Both the Michigan Department of Civil Rights and the MPVA will give you a brief overview of our services and mission. Then the Michigan Department of Civil Rights will speak to about disability law. They will also speak to the complaint process and investigations. And of course, at the end, we are going to provide you with contact information and give you an opportunity for questions. Valerie Barkley would now like to speak to you about the Michigan Department of Civil Rights.
Thank you, Jacqueline. So we're going to talk a little bit about just MDCR in general, but before I get started with that, I do have to put out this legal disclaimer for you. The information provided in this presentation does not and is not intended to constitute legal advice. All the information contained within this presentation, the content and materials used in this presentation are for general informational purposes only, and they are not a determination of any particular individual's legal rights. Next slide, please. All right, the Michigan Civil Rights Commission is an 8-member commission. It was established by the state of Michigan's Constitution in 1963 to safeguard constitutional and legal guarantees against discrimination. The governor appoints the commission members. They are appointed for 4-year terms, and not more than 4 members can be of the same political party at any given time. The Michigan Department of Civil Rights was established in 1965 to support the work of the Michigan Civil Rights Commission. We essentially became the operational arm of the MCRC. Next slide, please. The purpose of MDCR is really vast. There are a lot of different things that this small department does for the citizens of the state of Michigan. First and foremost, we enforce civil rights law. This is generally done through investigation of discrimination complaints and through possible legal action that our legal department may have to take. We also help to prevent discrimination, and this is done in a variety of ways, such as through our community engagement division, which has partnerships and initiatives with various community partners throughout the entire state. These initiatives also assist with some training opportunities. We've done some town halls. And then finally, we set to serve communities, supporting diversity and inclusion to serve the needs of residents. This is done through every aspect of the Michigan Department of Civil Rights, from engagement out in the community through our education division, making sure our internal staff is trained and knows all of the changes and legal changes to things, educating the public by our intake department. We're taking complaints of discrimination, possibly giving referrals if for whatever reason the MDCR is unable to take a complaint. We're going to get more into the complaint process a little later. And then again, through investigating complaints. So next slide, please. All right. The Michigan Department of Civil Rights is authorized by law to investigate complaints of discrimination. When we investigate complaints, we are impartial, meaning that we are neutral fact finders. We're not an advocate or a representative for either party, the claimants or the respondents. So MDCR enforces specific laws that protect people from discrimination. Our 2 state laws include the Elliott-Larsen Civil Rights Act, or known as ELCRA. ELCRA protects from race discrimination, color, religion, national origin, age, sex, marital status, height, weight, familial status, and arrest record. And then our other state law is the Persons with Disabilities Civil Rights Act, which of course is disability related. MDCR also has a contractual partnership with the EEOC, or Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, and HUD, the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. And through these 2 partnerships, MDCR is able to investigate cases which we call duly filed complaints. And these cases fall under both the state laws and the federal laws. And so some of the federal laws that MDCR is able to enforce include, but are not limited to, because there's a lot, Americans with Disabilities Act, Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, and the Fair Housing Act. Next slide, please. All right, the Department of Civil Rights is here for you. Some common examples: when you apply for a job, or when you are an employer and you hire an employee, when you look for a place to live, or perhaps you're a landlord offering some type of housing for sale or for rent, when you utilize public services, programs, and activities, and when you patronize businesses that are open to the public. Again, MDCR is here for you. Next slide, please. And I'm going to go ahead and turn this on over to Jacqueline.
Thank you, Valerie. I'm now going to briefly tell you about the Michigan Paralyzed Veterans of America. Paralyzed Veterans of America was founded in 1946 after World War II, when many veterans were coming home with spinal cord injuries and were often displaced and put into nursing homes. Seeing a large disparity, our mission was founded to serve veterans with spinal cord injury or disease. The Michigan chapter has proudly served our state for over 60 years. We continue to advocate for barriers that affect all people with disabilities, not just veterans, to this day. We are proud to be at the forefront of disability rights issues. The MPVA is a 501c3 organization, and lots of our programs do serve the community as a whole. For instance, our advocacy programs and our loan closet serve the Michigan community as a whole. Our loan closet contains durable medical goods like wheelchairs, walkers, shower commodes, and are available to anyone in need of such products. First come, first serve by scheduling an appointment and picking up at our chapter headquarters. But today our main goal is to discuss our role in ensuring your disability rights. We have done so by being active in settlement agreements on numerous civil rights complaints filed in federal court against municipalities throughout Michigan for violating Title II of the Americans with Disabilities Act. The chapter also acts as a resource and advocate for various organizations. Some examples include proper slope and installation of curb cuts, accessible seating at all site levels in large arenas, addressing inclusion at condominium and apartment communities and properties, serving on nonprofit boards to review existing policies and procedures to determine if they can improve the lives of people with disabilities and to ensure that they can live as independently as possible. Informing and educating the public regarding disability laws and the Americans with Disabilities Act and state and local building codes. And I believe now Michael Harris would like to speak to you on some of these topics.
All right, thank you. Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon. I apologize. It is afternoon, but as Jacqueline said, MPVA, since I've been working there since 1996, really their big focus is being able to access the communities that we reside in because of makeup of our members, because we're all dependent on the use of a wheelchair for mobility. And so we have always put that in the forefront of our advocacy efforts over the years. And as Jacqueline indicated, we have filed lawsuits in federal court in order to get compliance. The one that I take most pride in was the lawsuit against the University of Michigan that we filed in 2006. We had worked with the university probably for 10 to 11 years trying to resolve our differences. And unfortunately, when there was a disagreement with the interpretation of the requirement of the ADA as related to renovations taking place at the football stadium, we were forced to file a lawsuit in federal court. And the advantage of filing lawsuits in federal court is it allows both parties to present their arguments, and then a judge will make a ruling on the arguments presented. And we have always felt confident going into our lawsuits that we're on the right side of the law. And on several occasions where we have filed lawsuits, we've had successful outcomes because we do our due diligence to ensure that what we're presenting is that we're on solid legal footing before filing our complaints. The other thing that we have really been proactive in is filing complaints against businesses. I would say since I've been with PVA, we probably filed well over 500 complaints in my time. And when we file complaints, our goal is to be a resource. We're not there to like put a gun to the business owner's head and say, you got to do this or else. We try to educate them to what the issue is in our letter that we send out to the business. And we also include tax incentives that are available to the business owner to let them know that there are tax incentives to help you to address the issues that we identify in the letter. And when we're seen as a resource, we get better responses from the business community because we try to tell them our goal is to be able to use your business, to be able to access your business without having to encounter architectural barriers. And so we've been successful over the years in trying to be proactive in a positive way. And when I look at the passage of the ADA, it's probably the greatest thing that happened in my lifetime in terms of a civil rights bill because I was injured in '86. And prior to the passage, I did have difficulty accessing certain restaurants when I would go out with my friends or family members. But we also have to realize, even though the ADA has been around for almost 25 years now, it hasn't been fully realized. There's still work that we need to do. And it's also important to realize that there are no ADA police out there enforcing it. So it's important that whenever we see a violation, that we file a complaint. Because the only way that federal and state civil rights laws are going to be effective is everyone does their part. And so with that being said, I'll hand it off back to Jacqueline.
Thank you so much, Michael. I would like to hand off now to Tyra to discuss disability law.
Thank you, Jacqueline. So as Valerie talked about, we have state and federal disability laws that our department has authority and jurisdiction to enforce. And the first one being is the Michigan Persons with Disabilities Civil Rights Act. And you can see the citations under the heading there if you're interested in delving a little bit more and finding out just a deep dive. But we're gonna go ahead and give you what you need to know today too as well. So the state civil rights law defines the civil rights of persons with disabilities. It clearly lays out what is prohibited conduct. And that includes any discriminatory practices, policies, or customs in the exercise of those rights. And it also details what the penalties and remedies are available to individuals under the Act. Next slide, please. The federal disability rights law, for the purposes of what we're talking about today, is the Americans with Disabilities Act. And it has been amended a couple times to include some greater protections. It mandates that no qualified individual with a disability should ever be excluded from participation, denied goods, services, or benefits, denied access to programs or activities, or subjected to discrimination based on their disability status. And this also covers retaliation. This means that if you exercise your rights under the Act and then you experience an additional act of discrimination or harm, you're protected as well. So the ADA, as most people are familiar with, the ADA was enacted in 1990, and it was amended in 2008 for the purpose of reinstating really greater protections that the legislator had when they enacted this law. After it was enacted in 1990, there were several Supreme Court cases that were heard, and they were very narrow and limiting in what a definition of a disability was. And so it excluded a lot of people from being protected under the Act. So the legislature in their wisdom decided to make some changes and reinstore the intent of the legislature to say, you know what, we're not going to really go into a deep dive in someone's medical history. We don't need to be stringent or exacting. If a person meets one of the three-prong definition, and we're going to allow and include those protections. Next slide, please. So getting right into Title I of the ADA, the Title I covers employment. And this applies to employers who have 15 or more employees. It includes private employers, state and local government employers, employment agencies, and labor unions. It prohibits discrimination against individuals with disabilities in all aspects of employment, from job application procedures, hiring, postings, recruiting and marketing, firing, promotions, benefits, training, any term, condition, or privilege of employment that you can think of. And that also includes employer-sponsored events such as holiday parties, luncheons, retreats, work meetings, or trainings. So it really does cover everything from the time you see a job posting until the time that you leave employment. And I just want to mention also that although the ADA requires that the employer have 15 or more employees to have protections, the state law, the Persons with Disabilities Civil Rights Act, provides protections for one or more employees. So if you had an issue with an employer and they didn't meet the number of employees for the ADA, and it was timely, you could always file still under the state law. So should keep that in mind as well. Next slide, please. So what are some examples of accommodations that you can ask for, or that you've seen or we see in the employment setting? It can be anything from changes to the application process, because not everyone learns or understands information in the same way. So you may need an alternative application or format. You may need to have questions read to you. You may need more time to fill out paperwork. That's part of the process. Providing qualified interpreters. As you see today, we have 2 very well qualified interpreters to convey information to make sure that we all effectively understand what is being communicated. Another example is making existing facilities accessible. So if someone needs a ramp to utilize the facility, possibly repositioning shelves in order to reach them, those are some types of physical modifications to the property. And then acquiring or modifying any kind of equipment. Some people use telephone amplifiers, some people use screen readers. And so those are all things that the employer has to consider. And then finally, as I said earlier, some of the things that we see are modifying testing or training materials or policies. Not everyone is able to maybe use or maneuver a keyboard. There may be testing required for your the hiring process or continuing education in your employment. So you certainly have the right to request modified testing. And I just wanted to add about accommodation cost. A lot of times there are misconceptions or stereotypes about hiring people with disabilities, that it's going to cost so much money and it's going to be so burdensome. But we know that studies have shown that most accommodations are very little cost. Most of them don't cost anything, but the majority are under $500. So we really do try to explain to employers that there are resources out there for you. Just like Michael said, the Job Accommodation Network is a really good resource that allows employers to go online and search for accommodations, and they give a lot of information about how to help people with disabilities, what types of jobs may need certain accommodations. So it's a very good resource. Next slide, please. So moving on in our ADA journey onto Title II, we've moved away from the employment setting, and now we're talking about what are the duties and obligations of our state and local governments to persons with disabilities. So Title II protects individuals with disabilities from discrimination, just like Title I. And it applies to all services, programs, and activities that are offered to the public, except for public transportation services. A lot of times people, they may need accommodations, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But it's really important to remember that anything that's offered to the public, it has to be just as usable to and accessible by persons with disabilities if it's offered by a state or local government entity. And that includes attendance at public meetings, boards, and commissions. Title II extends those original protections that came out of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. Back in 1973, this law was passed, and it said, anybody who receives any federal dollars has to comply with, accommodating persons with disabilities. But at that time, it only applied to entities that receive federal dollars. Well, that didn't really cover everybody. So that's why they enacted the ADA and specifically Title II. Next slide, please. So talking again about some examples that you may need, accommodation examples that come up when you are dealing with state or local government entities or offices, just like Michigan Department of Civil Rights or the Treasury, Lottery, DNR, Department of Corrections. All of those are state entities that have to provide reasonable accommodations. So removal of a barrier, if it's not too difficult or expensive to do. If there's a public meeting and let's say it's on the 3rd floor of a building that's not accessible, they may have to find a new building to hold the meeting, or move the meeting to a ground floor level in the absence of an elevator. Another one is providing auxiliary aids and services, and those would be things like cart services, Braille documents, large font, providing information in a written form ahead of time so you can review it before you come to the office, anything that you need to be able to access those services. And then another example we see quite a bit is alternative methods of verifying identification, because a lot of times people with disabilities, or people in general, not everyone has a driver's license, but maybe they have some other form of ID. So we ask that state of Michigan entities don't require a driver's license to verify identity as much as possible, and because that's very limiting to people with disabilities, or a lot of people in general. And then providing extra time or assistance in completing forms. So if you were to go into an office and you needed some assistance in completing an application form for benefits or services, you can certainly ask for that. That doesn't mean that you might get it right on the spot. It depends on how busy the office is or the staff flow, but you do have a right to engage in that process to see if they can assist you now or at a later date. It's important to note that under all of these titles, 1, 2, and 3, you cannot be charged for accommodations that you ask for. So if you did need cart services or interpretation services or large print documents, those have to be provided to you if they're reasonable and at no cost to you. Next slide, please. Okay, so and finally, to wrap up the titles, we're going into Title 3, which is public accommodations. So public accommodations are any private business that's open to the public, and there's a list of those types of things. So we're getting away from state and local governments. We're not talking about the employment setting, but we're talking about grocery stores, movie theaters, schools, daycare facilities, doctor's offices, all of those things that we all visit in our daily activities. In Title 3, same as the others, prohibits disability-related discrimination in places of public accommodation. There, again, businesses that fall into 12 different categories, and this is not an exhaustive list on this screen, but it's just a lot of the ones that we see. Religious organizations and private clubs are exempt from the Act under most circumstances. And accessibility also not only means physical accessibility, but also communication access as well. So allowing you to get into the door, but then effective communication when you're in the door as well. Next slide, please. And some types of examples that we've seen, and again, this is not exhaustive, but these are some of the top ones that you see when you're talking about businesses. Allowing service animals, right? Most of us have heard stories of people being turned away from restaurants or grocery stores when they have legitimate service animals because there's a lack of understanding and education in the law. So public entities, private businesses, they have to allow service animals into their businesses as long as the animal is under control of the handler and housebroken. They have to allow the animal in. And this also means that they can't ask you for paperwork or certification or letters. There's nothing really under the law that says that an animal has to have any of that. Really, the protection comes in from the animal being required due to a disability. And then there's a connection between the disability and what the animal can provide or offer, work or tasks. Another example is auxiliary aids and services. So if someone goes into a grocery store, they may need assistance locating an item. They may need help obtaining the item, reaching the item. Accessible websites is a big thing, right? There's a lot of lawsuits around the country against public businesses that have websites and they're not accessible to screen readers, or maybe you have to maneuver a mouse in order to order something online. And that's not something that everyone can do. So websites have to be accessible when it comes to purchasing goods and services in the marketplace. And then finally, again, removal of barriers. So if it's a restaurant, that may mean repositioning tables or chairs, moving potted plants or garbage cans out of the way to allow access for people who use mobility devices. Next slide, please. So I believe I am turning this over back to my colleague Valerie to talk about the complaint process.
Yes, thank you very much, Tyra, for all of that very helpful information. So what's next? So you've gone to a store and something happened there where you felt like your rights were violated, or you've gone to work and you lost out on that promotion, or maybe you weren't hired. There's a lot of different things that the Michigan Department of Civil Rights can help with. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about the complaint process. And so aside from Michigan Department of Civil Rights, there are other forums in which you can file a complaint, such as the U.S. Department of Justice, the state of Michigan Title II departmental ADA coordinators, the U.S. Department of Transportation, and as always, you can seek your own personal lawyer and initiate a civil lawsuit. Next slide, please. how to file a complaint with the U.S. Department of Justice. Although, this isn't my department or my expertise, we did want to share just a little bit of information with you regarding the U.S. DOJ. And so the particular website, since it's not listed here, I will tell you is www.justice, all spelled out, .gov/CRT for the Civil Rights Division. And so on the US DOJ's website, you will find a lot of very useful information first and foremost, but there is an online complaint form that you can file directly through their website. You can also file an ADA complaint form by mail and by fax. If there's any questions or you need to somehow contact the US DOJ by phone, their telephone number, which is not listed on the slide, and I'll give it to you, is 202-514-3847. And the TTY number is 202-514-0716. Next slide, please. And I do see something in the chat. Yes, I can, when my presentation is done, I can go ahead and get some of that information and throw it in the chat for you as well. Okay, so now talking about the MDCR specifically, we have a variety of ways to contact us and to file a complaint with your state civil rights department. Our service center is located in our Detroit office. MDCR does have 3 field offices, one in Grand Rapids, one in Lansing, but our main office is in Detroit. Again, that's where our service center, our intake department is located. And the direct telephone line to our service center is 313-456-3700. You may reach MDCR toll free at 800-482-3604. And our TTY number is 877-878-8464. And finally, our fax is 313-456-3701. Like the U.S. Department of Justice, MDCR has an online complaint option as well. We accept complaints by mail, and you can contact our MDCR intake unit through our service center and do what we call a Zoom option or a virtual intake, which is available currently. Right now, because of some COVID protections and precautions, we aren't taking face-to-face complaints yet, but I anticipate that being by appointment only at some point in the near future. So you can check back with our website, which is www.michigan, all spelled out, .gov/MDCR. We do update that website pretty frequently as needed. And so just to go back real quick on the virtual intakes, they're conducted on 2 different days, on Mondays from 8 a.m. Until noon, and Wednesdays from 1 p.m. until 5 p.m. And virtual intakes are conducted on a first come, first serve basis. So there may be a slight wait when it comes to contacting MDCR through that way. And I believe that's it for complaints. So next slide, please. All right, so just talking a little bit about MDCR's intake process. When you contact our department because you feel like you've been harmed and that you felt like it was, we'll keep it with disability since that's what this presentation is about. When you contact us, one of our customer service representatives is going to ask you a variety of questions. I mean, they're the experts, right? They can walk you through this, this process and just try to have as much information available as possible when you are talking to one of our reps. They're going to ask you when your harm occurred. If it has occurred within the past 180 days, that's what we call timely for processing. If it happened, a year or 2 or 3 ago, that's not going to be timely for our state laws. So let's just say, you were not hired for a job and you believe it's because of your disability, and this was last week. So you contact the MDCR and your customer service rep is walking you through that. And so, yes, we have met that timely piece there and our basis piece, which is disability. And then our other jurisdictional arm is the proper area. And so employment, like we have talked about a couple of times today, is one of the areas in which MDCR has jurisdiction to enforce civil rights laws. And so once you've named all of those appropriate bases, then what's going to happen is the customer service rep is going to generate a certified complaint that will get sent to you, and you have to have it notarized, signed and notarized, and then return it to us so that we can begin the investigation process. Next slide, please. All right, as Tyra was just mentioning a few minutes ago, ADA Title II complaints. Remember, Title II is pertaining to state and local government entities. And so if you've experienced disability discrimination from a state department or state agency, or perhaps you were a witness to an incident of disability bias from a state department or agency, not only does the MDCR make itself available to take these complaints, but the state of Michigan ADA coordinators does as well. And there is a directory of ADA coordinators available online. The website for that would be www.michigan, all spelled out, .gov/disability resources. And there's a variety of information and resources available on that website, which is pretty informative. But there you can find that directory of ADA coordinators, the state of Michigan ADA complaint form, and ways to file a complaint directly there. Or again, you can contact MDCR in all the ways that I previously described to contact us for that complaint and investigation process. And next slide, please. And so, although air travel compliance and the ACAA is not something that MDCR enforces, we wanted to just give you a quick reference and a little bit of tidbit information that you can take with you and perhaps look into if you fall under this particular area. But complaints alleging disability discrimination covered under the Air Carrier Access Act, or ACAA. That act is something that prohibits discrimination by U.S. and foreign air carriers. And when I say foreign air carriers, what I mean is for travel to the U.S. or from the U.S. And those airlines that operate, out of the country. And so these prohibitions pertain to both physical and mental disabilities. Some of the things that the ACAA covers could be things like airline passengers can't just be refused flights because they have a disability. Airlines can't require advance notice of a passenger having a disability, although there may be some need to contact the airline prior to a flight if you need to request reasonable accommodations. Airlines can't limit the number of passengers on a particular flight with disabilities. And another example would be airlines can't assign or restrict seating on flights, with the exception of something pertaining to safety, such as like the exit row. There's a lot of really great information available with regard to the ACAA on the transportation.gov website. And certainly, I would encourage anyone who has some concerns in this area or who feels like they've been discriminated against in this area to visit the U.S. Department of Transportation website and to file any necessary complaints directly with them. And so with that, I will hand this over to my colleague, Tyra.
Thanks, Val. And I know there's some questions in the chat and we can get to those. And I did put in there, it's such a very large link, but it is a link to the Michigan Voter Guide if you want to check that out as well. So moving on to cover what is an investigation by the Department of Civil Rights look like. Next slide, please. So our investigation process always starts with someone who contacts us, obviously by phone or email. As Val said, prior to the pandemic, we did have office hours. We do have the virtual intake. So someone will come into our office and tell their side of the story, whether they feel they were denied employment or not provided an accommodation to access a business or a government service. They can come in and talk to someone. They can talk to someone over the phone right now or virtually to see if it's something that we can handle. We refer to the person who files the complaint as the claimant, and the entity or business that they're filing against is the respondent. So once a complaint is taken, an investigation is conducted by an investigator who, there's many methods that they use. It could include a site visit, witness interviews, document reviews if it's applicable, looking at how other people were treated. So for example, if I were to, if I think that I was not hired because I'm a person with a disability, the department would look at what that job opening was the person qualified, and how were other people treated, and who was the ultimate candidate. So both the claimant and respondent can present evidence during the investigation process. As Valerie said at the beginning, we are a neutral third party, that we're an enforcement agency, but we do maintain neutrality up to the point that we find evidence or cause of discrimination. We also represent the state's interest as well. So not only the person who files the complaint, but the general public who may be subjected to discrimination for a similar practice. So we also do things called resolution and fact-finding conferences. So once a complaint is filed and we're investigating, and maybe we think it's time to sit down with the parties and kind of hash out some possible resolutions, clarify some issues, we can set up a meeting to do that. And sometimes additional evidence comes out and it helps focus the investigation. But we really do try to resolve all the complaints that come through the door. Resolution attempts are made throughout the whole process. From when someone calls, we'll say, what are you looking for as a resolution to your concern? Because maybe that's something that we can do quickly. If both parties agree to a settlement, then we will close the investigation file. But if no settlement is reached, and we complete the investigation, and then we prepare a report on the findings. Next slide, please. So some of the possible investigation outcomes. So a dismissal is a finding if someone files a complaint, we conduct the investigation, and there is just insufficient evidence to move forward. That doesn't mean we don't believe the person or think that maybe there's something that could be corrected, but sometimes the evidence is lacking to show that. So MDCR at that point would conduct what's called an exit interview with the claimant to let them know these are your allegations, these are the findings, and the complaint ultimately will be dismissed. However, it's just like when you go to court, sometimes you have the right to appeal the decision, and MDCR has an internal mechanism for appealing closures. So if someone feels that they disagree with the findings of a report, they have 30 days after the closure date of the file to file what's called a reconsideration request. And that is a separate department within MDCR, a staff attorney who reviews the file from beginning to end to check to see if there was anything that was missed. So we do have a thorough vetting process. The next possible outcome is called conciliation. So if we do investigate the case and we do think that there's enough evidence to move forward, we invite the respondent, whether that's an employer or a business, to meet with us, to hold a conference where we lay out the evidence and say, it looks like there's, a violation of the act here, and we want to try to address it. And we always ask the claimant, what are they seeking as a resolution? So whatever the claimant asks, we convey to the other side. Now, that doesn't mean that, people get millions of dollars or things like that. Our job is really to ensure that they're complying with the law, that they have the proper training to understand the law and convey that to their employees and staff, and to deal with the public. And then we do try to make the claimant whole. So we ask for any damages that they may have, and we try to assist in seeking reimbursement of those types of damages. So another outcome could be a charge. So if we take the complaint, we investigate it, we think there's something there that may be a violation, but the respondent says, I don't want to resolve it, which happens sometimes. We can issue a legal document. It's called a charge. If respondent refuses to address the conciliation or situation in conciliation, we can issue that formal charge. And it's more like a formal complaint that would then go in front of an administrative law judge for a public hearing. And then the last one you see on the screen here is a hearing. A hearing officer will conduct a public hearing on the charge. All of the witnesses, it's like a little mini trial. The rules of evidence apply. All witnesses testify under oath. All parties have the right to cross-examine witnesses, and the hearing officer will then make a determination of whether or not there was a violation of the act. And if so, what the proper penalty should be. Next slide, please. And finally, after the hearing, one of several several things can happen. So our commission then reviews the findings of an administrative law judge, and they allow the parties to argue whether it should be adopted formally or not, whether or not the department should put their stamp on it and say this is an order. The commission will then issue a final order that either dismisses the case or requires corrective action that may include, as I said before, paying damages to the claimant. Both parties who do not agree, if either side says, I don't like this outcome, I disagree, they have the right to appeal it in circuit court by a judge. And at that point, our department kind of is out of it because we don't have authority to usurp, we don't have authority to question what a judge may decide. And filing a discrimination or complaint with the department does not prevent a claimant from taking legal action. So if someone were to file a complaint with our department, and then maybe a few months later, they decided that they wanted to seek some remedies in court, they certainly could do that. But in most instances, our department would then close out our case for the very same reason that I just said, is that once a judge or a court gets their hands on a case, we don't really have authority to intervene or to set aside the authority of the court. Next slide, please. And with that, I'll turn it over to Jacqueline.
Thanks so much, Tyra. The MDCR and the Michigan Paralyzed Veterans of America have our contact information on this slide. We please ask you to share these resources. And just so everyone knows, we are fortunate that we are able to record today's webinar. So I'm going to work this afternoon to get this webinar uploaded and shared to you via email. And we'll also be sharing it on our social media. So this contact information will come directly to your email where you registered. Please feel free to share our contact information widely. Before I open up for questions, I would just really like to thank the Michigan Department of Civil Rights for collaborating with us on this webinar today. This content is so important, and the MPVA is very proud and grateful to work in conjunction with the Michigan Department of Civil Rights. We learned even more through this process, and like Michael had said, he's been here since 1996. I've been here for 14 years, and I think that shows that it's so important to stay informed and to keep passing information like this along and refresh each other. So thank you so much to our friends at the Michigan Department of Civil Rights and for your hard work. And we just greatly appreciate you collaborating with us today. I'd also be remiss if I didn't thank our ASL interpreters today, Bethany and Sarah. Thank you so much for adding to this presentation. We certainly appreciate your expertise as well. I would now like to open up to questions. I know there have been many questions in the chat box, so I'm going to try to scroll and see if I can catch some of these. Certainly, if you have a question that you'd like to type in the chat box, or if you want to unmute your microphone and try to speak up, that's fine. We may not be able to get to all the questions, but rest assured, I will be emailing you after the fact, so you will have my contact information, and you will also have a recording of this entire webinar and access to it. So with that, I see we have a first question from Lisa, and it looks like, greetings. So if you are requested to only show a driver's license during voting, would that be a violation of your civil rights if you have other ID?
This is Tyra speaking. I can take that one. I can't make any kind of statement as to whether something's a violation of your rights. I can tell you what your rights are. So in Michigan, yes, you don't have to show a driver's license, but you have to show what they call a valid ID. And that is determined to be either a driver's license or a personal ID issued by the state. You can also use a federal ID, or you can use a US passport, military identification, or student identification if someone is a student. You can also, if you don't have any of those, you can still vote without a picture ID if you sign an affidavit. The affidavit, once you sign it though, you do have to actually vote. So Michigan law does, cover the fact that not everyone has picture ID. So I did put that link in the chat too that goes into some great detail about that, but you do not have to have a driver's license in order to vote.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I'm trying to scroll through. It looks like most of these questions have been answered unless I'm mistaken. Does anyone else have any questions that you feel we missed in the chat box? I have a raised hand, Marguerite. Go ahead, Marguerite. You can type in the chat box if that's applicable, or if you'd like to unmute yourself.
Yes, it is. Yes. Thank you. Did you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you. You can go ahead with your question.
Yes, it's in chat.
It's in the chat. Okay, I'm gonna scroll back up. I'm sorry, I missed it. Okay, when we can't make U.S. Disability to pay for our pet carrier charge and receive a letter from Spirit Airlines.
Yes. The S stand for
Service dog.
dog.
Service dog. Okay. So when you take your service dog, can't make the U.S. Disability to pay for pet carrier charge. Okay.
So this is Valerie speaking, and what I'm understanding the question to be relates to an airline issue and service animal or potential service animal issue. That's not the MDCR's jurisdiction. That would be with the U.S. Department of Transportation. If there was a concern, that needed to be reported to them, I would certainly encourage you to contact the U.S. Department of Transportation. They have the jurisdiction over the ACAA, which covers disability, discrimination in airlines. And I think
This is Tyra. Can I just add to that? Yeah, I agree with that. This is Tyra. I just want to say, yeah, there isn't, and I know most people know this, but just to clarify, and service animal under the Air Carriers Access Act now only includes dogs, okay? And that's dogs versus pets, right? So pets, if it's not a service dog, it's a pet, and they can charge fees for that. My understanding, and as Val said, you should always check with the federal law and the specific airline, but I know most airlines, not all, but most airlines have policies that are pretty fleshed out since the changes came aboard, and they don't charge for trained service dogs.
Michael, did you want to add anything to that regarding Paralyzed Veterans of America's work with the Air Carrier Access?
Yeah, Michael Harris. I agree. I know they changed the definition of a service animal. If anyone's interested, we can get that out to you. It's more restricted now. Before, you could almost take any type of animal or pet on there and define it as a service animals. I know those days are that's not allowed anymore. And there's no fee for the service animal. My understanding is that there is no fee for that. They can't charge you a fee, but if anyone wants to file a complaint, there's a 1-800 number we can give out to anyone that's interested. And they have a hotline at the Department of Transportation, just like the DOJ does, where you can file complaints 5 days a week when you see violations take place that's in violation of the Air Carrier Access Act.
Thanks, Mike. It looks like Norma, did we answer your question?
A little bit,
Okay.
but a friend of mine who was a victim of what happened, and I suggest that she made a complaint against the airline because her rights have been violated 2 times. So, I have flown with Spirit Airlines and I have never had any problems like that. But since they have changed the guidelines, cars with the cars and a little first class of the ASS Act. And we had to fill out a paperwork. And the specific paperwork with our airline. So my question is, how long would it take to get the airline?
To respond.
Yes.
So you, okay, so
Thank
um,
you.
so you've had 2 violations and you filled out paperwork and you are inquiring how long you should anticipate waiting for an airline to respond. Michael, you sat on the Delta advisory board. Would you be able to speak to that?
Yeah, I know Delta would respond right away with an email that they had received the complaint. And usually they would be able to investigate it in a timely manner. So if you haven't received a response to your complaint, and let's say it's been over a month, I would, if you contact us, I will give you the number, or I would be even happy to call in the complaint on your behalf.
Yeah.
And just let them know that you filed it and you haven't heard back from the airline to your complaint. And airlines do have a deadline. You know, they just can't sit on them forever. They have to respond as quickly as they can.
Yeah, I want to second Michael because we have another question. It says, how would you go about speaking with someone if Spirit Airline broke your wheelchair and they're saying they won't pay for it? This is an issue that Paralyzed Veterans of America has taken airlines and the governments and the guidelines regarding airlines to task about. It is something we're constantly dealing with. So I would be happy to have anyone that has questions on or issues on these airline topics to email me at JKOCHIS as in Sam at Michigan, the entire state spelled out, PVA.org. I'm going to put my email right now in the chat box, and I will ensure that this gets to Michael and we can help anyone with any of these inquiries and put you in the right direction. It is extremely frustrating to be an individual with disabilities traveling, and PVA has really, this has been one of their core issues that they advocate for. All right, are there, you are so welcome. Are there any other questions?
Yes, I'm trying to figure out how to make my mute button work.
I can hear you.
Okay, good. I'm Norma, and I experienced a brain injury as a result of a car accident. And I've been tortured with paperwork that's required in order to get reimbursed from providers who are qualified and were referred to me by the doctor. And I did seek services in a timely manner. And I paid them because that's their terms of services. They don't deal with insurance companies. They demand payment on delivery. And I have evidence from them that the services were provided in their clinical notes and receipts for the fact that I paid them. But my car insurance company is denying it in one case, and the rest of it, they're just saying it's in process. But there's a time limit on all this, and I'm overwhelmed with anxiety because I'm old and I'm on fixed income, and I'm out at least $2,000, not counting attendance services that my son provided and mileage that my friends and family got me to 3 treatments a week. And they don't charge me for all the extra paperwork that I've asked for, but it's never enough. Now I'm supposed to get a bill from them. Well, they've already done so much in addition to providing me with services that are helping, that the anxiety is now crushing me. And I just want to know if MDCR can, I mean, even just this webinar, it's like I need a navigator to figure out, do I want Michigan PVA or do I want MDCR or do I want the ADA? I've already sent an email to the ADA Great Lakes chapter, and I just feel overwhelmed.
Well, first, I just want to say I'm so sorry for what you're going through. Many of our members at the Michigan Paralyzed Veterans of America have been impacted by an auto accident. Michael Harris mentioned earlier that his spinal cord injury is due to an auto accident. Michael, do you want to speak to this?
Yeah, no, I send Jacqueline an email with your contact. I'm personally having a similar issue. My health, I had a nurse coming out once a week, and that was cut off because of the reimbursement. You know, they were paying prior $170 a month. Now they're only paying $30 a month, which is definitely in violation of the what the law requires. It was only supposed to be a 45% reduction. So I'd be happy to help you because I plan on filing complaints, and I might even file a lawsuit in court if that's what it takes to resolve the issue.
Yeah, I have, I think it's 90 days in the case of the complaint from the optometrist who validated a claim for visual processing center in my brain. And I suppose I could go out another fee to pay for a psychotherapist to help me with my anxiety as a result of all this, because it's causing a lot of cognitive dissonance. And the whole thing about the auto accident has to be settled within a year, so 2/11 of 2023. And I don't know if I have what it takes to do all this stuff.
Yeah, a lot. Yeah. We definitely understand, Norma, and we are going to be here to champion that. I did put my email in the chat box, but just once more, it is JKOCHIS@Michigan, the whole state spelled out, PVA, so that's Paralyzed Veteran America.org. If you send me an email, I'm a little speedier than Michael. I will ensure that it gets to him and that we can start helping you to navigate some of that as best as we can.
Okay, that was in the email that came when I got into
Yes.
this.
Yes.
Yeah, and I can send the the comments, the question that I asked to the ADA Great Lakes chapter. So you've got the background and all the details on it.
That'd be very helpful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep. Yeah, by the way, I know you spoke with Peter Bird because he brought this issue up to me. So it must have been you who contacted him.
I don't know who Peter Berg
Yeah,
is.
he works at ADA Great Lakes Tech out of Chicago.
Oh,
So
good.
he's definitely
Okay.
aware of what's going on.
Yeah, because I have, as far as I know, I haven't heard from him. I've got a message that I haven't looked at, but that's because I'm on this webinar.
Well, we're
Thank
glad you're on here.
Yeah, right.
Well, thank you. Does anyone else have any other questions? Okay. As I mentioned, this is recorded. I am going to do my best. Just depends on how long it takes to upload, depending on how large the file is. And I hope to get this uploaded and sent to you today. At the very latest, you can expect it early Monday morning. But please feel free to email me in the interim. And I just want to say thank you so much again to everyone that attended, and a special thanks to the Michigan Department of Civil Rights. It is so awesome to partner and share our expertise. You guys are awesome.
Excuse me, Jacqueline.
Yes.
I think there's one more question in the chat by Breon Edwards. Did you all get to that one about Spirit Airlines and the?
Yes. Yes.
I missed
I
it.
did. I did read that question. Yes.
Okay, all right,
Yep.
thank you.
Yeah, and people listening, whenever you're at the airport, just to let you know that there is what's called a CRO, complaint resolution official, in each terminal. And if there's a disagreement between the airline and yourself of what's required under the Air Carrier Access Act, you can ask to see a CRO, and it's their responsibility to listen to the issue and then come up with a decision on who's right and whatever they think the issue is.
Okay, Mike, and you said CRO, what is that?
Yeah, it's a complete resolution official. Every terminal
Okay.
has one.
Okay.
They're trained to understand the Air Carrier Access Act.
Mhm.
And so they, it's like the ADA coordinators that are appointed, at the state level. It's the CRO are appointed to dispute disagreements with the Air Carrier Access Act.
Thank you, great, okay.
Thank you. Well, I just want to say thank you so much to everyone. I hope you all have a lovely remainder of the day. Thank you so much for your time. We will be in touch, and thank you again to everyone who collaborated today. This was awesome.
Yep. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a
Great.
wonderful afternoon.
Same to all.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank
You're
you for
so
your
welcome.
hard work in putting this together. It's wonderful.
Oh, yes. Oh, thank you, everyone. Take care.
Bye now.